Welcome back to Peaceful Sounds in Alaska. This is Jason, and what we're going to do today is we're going to lathe one of these flute blank bodies that we've glued and drilled the air passage from the true sound hole. The mouth hole's already been drilled, and the slow air chamber's been injected. Here's the prepped sound hole, okay, on the flute, and we're going to. You'll have to excuse me. I'm doing this solo, so. So what we're going to do is we're going to put the flute blank into the chuck, and we're not going to totally tighten it down yet, okay? And then we're going to take it and we're going to put it into the receiver, okay? We slide this receiver to it. This receiver spins freely. All this is doing is stabilizing your flute, okay? I'm going to lock that down, but I'm not going to totally tighten that down yet, okay? Now for safety purposes, I put tape on the end of my flute here, okay, where the seam is. Hoping I'm getting that. Okay, I'm getting that. It's just in case, you know, at the centrifugal force of your flute, if it does fail at your seam, you know, your seam line, and it splits, that your flute's not going to come flying off of the. I've heard many stories where a flute has come flying off of the end of the lathe because it's spinning so fast. Okay, so we're gonna go back here. I'm gonna set my flute in the center. I'm gonna hand tighten it down. Okay. This is a 4-jaw chuck. I think it's a number 3 on this lathe. I'm gonna tighten this down. Okay. And we're gonna go back here. I'm going to tighten my spindle down. When I turn this crank here, it pushes the spindle this way, but I don't want to super tighten it, because like I said, this is just stabilizing your flute while it's spinning. I want to lock that spindle down. Okay. Alright, so we're going to come back here. I'm going to move the camera so you can see me take these measurements real quick. Okay, on my speed square, okay, here's my sound hole, okay, and my air passage. Now what we're going to do is we're going to mark our seat, the area that's not going to get lathed. So what I do is I mark, you know, I put 3.5. There should be a measurement here, you know, or you can, you know, do it this way, 3.5. But I'm going to put 3.5 just past, just a 1/16 of an inch past my sound hole. Okay, so 3.5, and then I'm going to mark it at 4, and then I'm going to mark it at 1/2. So your seat should be 3.5 inches. Okay, so I've made those marks, and we're going to make our marks on all 4 sides. You know, it doesn't have to be perfect. You can, if you want to, you know, use the speed square to get an absolutely perfect line. But you'll find that when you're lathing, that it's mostly, you just want to be able to see your lines as a guide. Okay, so I've created my seat. This area we are not going to lathe. Okay. I usually like to add a little bit to the back end of my seat. This is the mouthpiece. Okay, but I like to add just a tiny bit of visual so that when I hit this line, I know that I'm getting close to that first line. Okay, so I'm going to turn this lathe on, and you can see that it's left the lines on there, and you can see pretty good. Okay. Okay, I heard something moving, so I'm going to go back here and check my spindle. If you hear something moving on your lathe or rattling, that usually means that something is not tight enough, okay? But you don't want, like I said, you don't want to over tighten your flute, because what happens is if you tighten this end too much, if you tighten it too much, what ends up happening is your flute remember, it's hollow and it wants to flex, okay? And you're going to end up lathing something that's bent in a circle shape. Or in a bowed shape. Okay, come on in. This is my daughter Sable. She's coming in. She's gonna watch me lathe this flute today. All right, so we've made our measurements. Okay, so then we're gonna set our tool rest in preparation for lathing the mouthpiece. Now remember, you don't want this tool rest to hit on your four jaw chuck, so you just want to keep it a little bit away from it. And most of all, you want to make sure that this is locked down and in place, because if it moves, it'll come into your flute and it'll be bad. Okay, so what I've got here is a 1/4 inch gouge. I showed that in the previous video, the sharpening of the 1/4 inch gouge. Now, most important when you're throwing dust like this is you want to be wearing some sort of face protection, dust protection, especially with cedars, cedars and other dust, all dust, but so I'm gonna hook up my vacuum on the bottom. You may not be able to hear me very well, but it's because I'm going to turn on the vacuum, and as you can see, there's me, my face mask on. Okay, so I'm going to move this just a little bit closer, but I need to have room to do this. Okay, turn on the vacuum. Okay, I don't want to go too deep with that just yet. I'm going to come back with a 1/2 inch roughing gouge. Okay, I'm going to come back with this tool here. Okay, so I'm going to check my mouthpiece for depth, so that I've just gone beyond the meat. See, that's nice and round. It's really cool because you can begin to see the colorations come out in the flute, the red lines and everything. Okay, so this part is done for now, so we're going to switch over to the main body. So I got to scoot this over just a little bit more. Okay, and we're going to go to the main body of the flute.
Yeah. Hello? Hi.
Okay, so my daughter's going to step out and take a phone call here real quick. Alright, so what I'm going to do is I'm going to move my tool rest. Okay, and I'm going to set the tool rest just far enough. You want to check to make sure your tool rest is not going to hit, but you want to be close enough so that your knife, when it begins to cut, you're going to be removing material this way, so you have enough support, so that your knife is not getting caught and bent down. Okay, and you see I left my mark here where my seat is. I left it this way because I just want to lay this area here. And again, we want to lock this tool rest down. Okay, now I'm going to go to this 1 inch roughing gouge. Okay, and I sharpened it this morning. You're going to end up sharpening your knives like we talked about in the videos of sharpening. Alright, so I'm going to start here. Okay. Right there you saw, as I drew the knife in this direction, that it began to chatter. You're gonna get a smoother draw if you draw it to you. But sometimes you're gonna have to go backwards to get some shape. Some flute makers or spindle, you know, when you're doing a spindle, they use a gauge, you know, for thickness, you know, and you can adjust it to the thickness. But as you get better with the lathe, you'll get more comfortable with being able to gauge how thick your flute is. Okay, so I'm going to check it real quick. See, I can tell that I'm probably the right depth right here. See, and I'm looking at my seam. See, I erased my seam, but you can see there's still material here. So I've gone from this depth to a little bit wider right here. So I need to go back and do this area here. Yeah, I'm gonna check that again. It's okay to turn off your lathe and check your seams. You know, see, I erased that line. This is where our note holes are gonna go on the top here. So we need most of our meat here. You can see it's a little bit deeper on the bottom, but that's okay. Okay, we're gonna end up putting our note holes here. Okay, so I'm gonna move the camera and we're gonna switch positions so I can do the end of the flute here. I'm just going to move this a little bit more. Okay. Now we're going to do this part of the flute again. Now I'm going to move my tool rest again. And again, I want to check to make sure that my tool rest is not going to hit my flute, or my flute is not going to hit the tool rest. I'm going to make sure we lock that down. Okay, and we're going to begin again. See, right there at that end of that stroke, you can see the flute flex, because as you reduce your material, this flute is going to get more flexible. Some people use a spindle hold with wheels that actually hold the spindle in the center. That might be a little bit overkill if you get longer than 28 inches. Now you're going to have to start to be a little more careful as you start to get to the even area, you know, where your flute is even all the way across right here. Okay, because you don't want to create you know, an hourglass type of a shape to your flute. Okay, you see we're coming nice and even. I'm going to shut the lathe up. I'm going to take a look at it. Okay, take a look here. I got my seam on the top here. There's still a little bit of flat material on the sides. Remember, you've only got a limited amount of material to work with, but this is going to, when we sand this, it's going to straighten it right out, okay? Alright, so again, we're going to move this tool rest. I can scoot a little bit closer. We're going to do the end here. I'm doing this video for a buddy of mine, Brad Huey of Meadowcraft Flutes, out of Sheboygan, Michigan. Okay, he's a good friend of mine, and he asked me, he's about to receive himself a lathe, and I'm excited. His flute making abilities have definitely progressed, and I'm very, very proud of him. Okay, what I did was I did one pass, and what that does makes it real easy for you to cut the tape off the end here. Okay. Okay, so I can tell that that's probably pretty good for us in prep to do the sanding. So I'm gonna move the camera again, and what I usually start with is 100 grit. You know, 100. We just want to take some material down. You know, Norton sandpaper is the best. It's very flexible, and the material on the back is good for doing this. The first thing we want to do is we want to move this tool rest out of the way, okay? So I'm going to start back here at the mouthpiece. Make sure I got that in the shot here. Okay, we're going to sand this mouthpiece. Now sanding it to 100 is pretty good for in prep to tune your flute, you know, because you're going to have to do your finish sanding. I do know some flute makers that if their flute is, you know, if they want it to, the harder woods, to get it down to, like, you know, 320, 420, 500, 600, you know, to make a very glassy, smooth flute. At this point, I actually cure my flutes by spraying them, so I wanted the maximum absorption, but some people will actually make a natural flute covered in with beeswax or whatever type of finish that you prefer. I think I'm gonna move the camera again so you can see this long ways to see the strokes with the sandpaper, okay? But I think my body was kind of blocking that there. And remember to move your sandpaper back and forth because it'll heat up in certain spots and get hot. Sandpaper in it like this is very efficient, and it allows you that if you do have some little bit of high spots that you can actually work them with the sandpaper. Like I got a high spot right here. This makes for a beautiful round flute. The centrifugal force is actually doing the work for you. At this point, I'm going to turn off the lathe and we're going to check it. I do recommend you let the lathe totally shut off before you go touching it. I got bad habits. But look at that, nice and round. The colorations have actually come out in the flute. Now it's got some a little bit heavier grain lines, sanding lines from the 100. I usually just in prep as I step down to some 220, you know, some 220. Okay, and we're just going to go back to the mouthpiece here real quick. We're just making it, reducing our work with a hand sander. And you can see the fine dust that this thing is putting off. That's why you want to be wearing some sort of face protection. I should have got my daughter some face protection here.
I'm okay.
Okay, she's okay.
I do have a question though. Is there like a certain stance that you stand on the lathe, like if you're left-handed or right-handed?
Well, whatever is comfortable for you. You know, if you're left-handed, of course, you're gonna draw your knife differently. But just remember that this thing is spinning.
Yeah.
And you want to be easy and gentle. Your knives need to be sharp. You want the lathe to do the work for you. Okay? All right. Okay, so now we're gonna unlock the spindle, wind it back, unlock our seat. Gonna come back here to the chuck. I'm gonna unlock the chuck, and we have created a beautiful 1-inch bore round flute. The walls are a little more than 1/8 of an inch because you'll end up sanding your flute and they'll come down some more. It's ready to be tuned. You'll end up cutting this block off the mouthpiece and shaping your mouthpiece. And I know flute makers that make their flutes totally round, but that's kind of your preference. But now the flute weighs almost nothing. It weighs, you know, a 1 ounce, 1 pound, you know, 2 ounces or something like that, even in the box when I mail them out. All right, well, that concludes lathing a Native American style flute. This is Jason Leyva with Peaceful Sounds in Alaska with Sable, my daughter. And again, I want to say hi to my buddy Brad Huey in Sheboygan, Michigan. And I'm proud of you, bro. And this video is for you.